I had every single physician's resignation letter in my hand.
And doctors were leaving. They were resigning their privileges at the hospital.
There was huge enthusiasm to make this happen, and the support from the community was incredible.
When I found out they were putting in a northern program, well, that just did it. It was like, well, that's what I want to do.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
People thought they were crazy. You know, for us to actually develop a cancer center in such a short period of time was just unheard of.
We are covering the full spectrum of medical research in the north, which is amazing.
Without a new environment to work in, a new tower, a new hospital, whatever the case may be, there's just no real way around that.
It was an issue that had been brewing for months. Doctors and healthcare professionals were sounding the alarm. Prince George Regional Hospital was perilously short-staffed.
There's a shortage of medical doctors everywhere, and we're just having no luck at all. And in fact, our physicians are being headhunted by other communities with inducements and incentives, plus the warmer winters and better sailing that you find to the south of us.
That was May 11th, 2000, and Dr. Galt Wilson paints a bleak picture of the physician scene.
The problem is with small specialty groups, we're always just one or two resignations away from a crisis. And the people that remain, for example, with the departure of 2 orthopedic surgeons or 1 or 2 obstetricians, 2 or 3 anesthetists, 2 radiologists, the people that remain are under pressure, and they'll be tempted by those other jobs. So they're really looking to the government and the community to respond in a dramatic way very soon.
We had shortages of everything. No ORs, no backups for the ORs. We didn't have nurses, we didn't have beds. It was a crisis in the hospital, and not just the hospital, but the whole community.
At the time, Dr. Michael Moran was president of the Northern Medical Society, formed a few months earlier and made up of local doctors.
The problem that I saw was that as that crisis got bad, then people started leaving. And I could see myself having to leave, not because I wanted to, but because soon there were going to be no anesthetists or no ORs that were open because of lack of staff. So that was the crisis. We came up with a report that we presented to the Health Authority and to the government saying, you know, this is our problem, these are what we see as the solutions. Everybody says they've got problems, but we actually said, here are some solutions to our problems. And really, we got ignored.
A meeting to prevent the withdrawal of specialist services was set for 9:30 this morning at the hospital. But health ministry officials arrived at PGRH just 45 minutes before the doctors were set to walk out.
Well, I'm here to support the Health Authority and my staff who've been up here all week. I'm not here to negotiate.
You couldn't walk down the street without people having a conversation about how concerned they were about the state and the future state of healthcare where we lived. It was a pretty anxious time for people, and I felt it too.
We're open to new ideas. We don't see any. It's a very competitive market for doctors right now. People graduating from specialty training programs have opportunities in every part of the country. So whatever it is, it needs to be dramatic. It needs to make North Central BC stand out from the pack.
Even though the Northern Medical Society has proposed cash incentives for enticing new doctors, he says working conditions are just as important.
They want a facility with nursing staff and operating rooms functioning with beds available to do their work. The base funding of the hospital was recently boosted. The nursing staffing will remain a huge challenge, so you need all the elements in place.
The physicians were running up against significant apathy and took a bold move. They began resigning their privileges at the hospital.
The Ministry of Health has chosen not to talk to us today. We haven't heard anything from them. And the Departments of Surgery and Anesthesia are handing in their resignations, and I'm just on my way to do that right now.
You had to do a lot of soul searching to get that far.
It's a tremendously serious thing, and we did a lot of soul searching. And it was serious enough that when we started resigning our hospital privileges, I was the president of the Northern Medical Society, I had every single physician's resignation letter in my hand. What I was giving up was my ability to look after people. And it was a big decision. It was a terrible thing to do.
Tensions mounted as every day passed, but the surgeons had the support of the community.
I don't have a problem with it. I actually support the specialists. They work incredible hours. They go to school for an incredibly long time. And if that's the only way that they can get the government to listen, then that's what they had to do.
Oh, I think it's a shame that they were put in a position that they have to do that. I mean, they're doctors. They know this is what they do, and it's got to hurt them to try and do this.
Well, I guess it's come to a kind of a head. I guess it's time to get things done and cleaned up. And I guess if the doctors need a little bit of help, we should give them help.
We have canceled 19 surgeries last Thursday, 19 for Friday, 20 for today, and tomorrow we have canceled 18 surgeries.
How many patients have been flown away from Prince George for treatment?
Since the job action began on Thursday, we have had 8 patients transferred out because of the job action.
June 19th, 2000. 5 days since the surgeons pulled elective surgeries. The Society, the local healthcare authority, and the ministry were in meetings daily. But other specialists were following suit and resigning their hospital privileges.
From our point of view, at this stage, the next thing that happens is on Thursday, the remaining doctors in the hospital resign their privileges.
And doctors were leaving. They were resigning their privileges at the hospital. So there was an exodus of doctors, and there was a sense of incredible vulnerability on the part of the citizens of Prince George. I mean, that rally exhibited the sense of communal anxiety.
The community began to build on that anxiety, and in 7 short days, a rally had been organized.
A hastily formed committee has set up a protest rally for 5:30 Thursday night right here at the Prince George Multiplex so people can show how they feel about the broken healthcare system.
I think what the government has to realize is that BC doesn't end at hope. There's northern BC and there's people up here, and we need healthcare as well as everybody else does down in the lower south.
It was more than 10% of the population of Prince George showed up on a Thursday afternoon when people are supposed to be at work. And I think that's how much the people realized that we had a terrible problem that needed solutions. And so they were willing to support what we were saying.
I think it was filled to the rafters, like close to 7,000 people, because the floor was full, the stands were full, there was a stage in the end there, and the place was full. And again, if memory serves me, it was like 28 degrees in June.
A speaker at that rally, then Mayor Colin Kinsley, made a commitment to find resolution.
The City of Prince George is going to endorse and support a community working group to deal with healthcare issues over the broad spectrum.
You know, it was interesting because after the rally, I mean, that was a huge event. A group of us met together. Horst Sander was part of that for a while, Bert, Kelly, and there were just 6 or 7 of us, and we said, okay, we can never let this situation happen again.
While the doctors and the Ministry of Health ultimately reached a resolution, the threat of shortages was ever present. History could easily repeat itself.
Was there one moment in time where everybody was sitting around the table trying to figure out what to do, and somebody finally said, we need to train professionals here? That's the only answer.
Yeah, that was the general consensus, both between community leaders and academia. It just made sense that we were losing, the brightest young people from here that were going off to medical school and not returning. So by having them doing that here was the answer, and there was consensus on that, both, like I say, within academia, the medical profession, and the community leadership. One of the changing points was the UBC. UBC came on board. Martha Piper was the president, and Joanna Bates, who joined the action committee with me and many others, kind of made it happen, because within academia there's a sense that the pie is only so big, and if we put in another medical program, it's going to reduce the size of the piece for each. And that wasn't the case. Government said, well, we'll fund this separately and attach to UBC School of Medicine. So the degree from UNBC is a UBC degree.
In fact, it became a campaign promise for one of the local candidates running in the pending provincial election. Shirley Bond had been the chair of the board for School District 57 long before she opted to run provincially.
For me, it was a perfect fit. It was something I believed in passionately. And when I decided to run provincially, it was certainly a message that I took to my party saying, I can tell you right now, this is going to be something that is a priority for me, and I think we need to respond should we be lucky enough to be elected.
Ironically, June 22nd, the day of the Have You Had Enough Yet rally, was also UNBC's 10th birthday. Medical education was seen as the only option.
So it was really important to me that we worked together with UBC, because I knew that UNBC did not have the capacity to take on medical education on its own. We were not at that stage of development. But a partnership with UBC, which turned out to be a model for the rest of the world, I mean, it's been copied elsewhere, was the right way to go, and it's had dramatic effects.
And we must never again lose ownership of the Prince George Regional Hospital.
The Have You Had Enough Yet rally was the culmination of months of anxiety over the shortage of physicians, specialists in particular. Pressure was building to have medical education in the north. Train in the north, stay in the north was the new mantra. Train in the north, stay in the north. It was the only logical conclusion to avert any future physician shortages like the one that resulted in a rally in June of 2000.
Shirley Bond, most recently known as the chair for the School District 57 board, now wears a much larger hat.
Fast forward a year, a Liberal government has ousted the NDP. A familiar face was given a major role in cabinet, Minister of Advanced Education.
It was a bit overwhelming, I remember, at the time, but I was elated that we were going to see progress in the north. We knew it was going to be a challenge. I remember there were skeptics, and I thought to myself, well, this is going to be one tough task, but you can imagine how exciting it was to suddenly be put in the position of not just seeing it happen, but being part of the delivery team.
Enter Dr. Charles Jago, the president of the University of Northern BC, closely tied to the issue.
We're talking to UBC about a strengthened collaboration, so we're hoping to move in that direction. There was a cry and demand from the populace of Prince George to have a medical school at UNBC. So the desire for a medical school was not just mine or UBC's, it was coming from the community.
It was simply too much for UNBC to take on itself, a university of only a tender 10 years, but it wasn't an easy pitch to government.
No, it was unprecedented. And in fact, I think there were lots of people outside of this region and our province as well that thought that can't be done. That is just, you'd go from a rally of thousands of people to basically delivering a medical program. And it was an exceptional group of people. It was exhilarating, it was exhausting, and it was also at times quite frightening, because when you think about it, we need to get it accredited, we need to get the professionals to be involved, and the biggest skepticism of all was around whether or not we could attract the professionals we needed.
So most teaching in medical schools want students.
Once the program was accredited, the first order of business was to hire this man, Dr. David Snadden. How did you hear about this?
It was very strange. I kind of saw an advert for this way back. I think it was in 2002, at a time when I was being headhunted for another job, and it makes you a bit unsettled. And I emailed my CV away, not really thinking about it.
Dr. Jago recalls looking at a short list of candidates. None satisfied him. Back to the drawing board, and one man's curriculum vitae stood out.
And then one night, just after I was about to start another job in Scotland, we got this phone call from the search firm, which kind of turned our lives upside down for a while.
Was it a tough decision? That's a long way to go.
It seemed at the right time for us, for me and my wife. Our daughter at that time was getting married, and you know, it was a transition time for me anyway. So we thought, well, we could go for a few years and see what it's like. We can always come back.
And that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Dr. Snadden arrived in Prince George in January, -29 and in a blizzard. His first task was to find the staff to get the new program off the ground. This was, at the time that you came over, this was an idea.
Yeah.
And how daunting was it that you take this idea and you create something that's never been done before? That must have been a bit daunting.
Well, that was more the attraction of coming. I mean, who in their career in academic medicine gets to do something like this? These opportunities don't arise very much.
It's training, I mean, there's one curriculum, so the students who train here in Prince George get the same curriculum as the students in Vancouver, but context matters. So that they're working with physicians in small community practices, they're working in an area which has a challenge providing medical services. They're working in hospitals that don't have quaternary and tertiary care, right, backups.
Dr. Paul Winwood was the next lead to join the team. What do you hear anecdotally about that whole event, like how that whole thing transpired? What do you know about it?
I mean, it really is an amazing feat to bring a medical school to a small, resource-intensive northern town in Canada and make it successful. And the reason it was successful was because the community really wanted it. And there were lots of physicians and other community members that made this happen, really against all odds.
On behalf of the class, I really cannot express how glad we are to finally be here.
Astonishingly, by January of 2005, a mere 4.5 years after the rally, the first cohort of students arrived at the Northern Medical Program.
Doctors stay where they're trained as a general rule. So training people in the North means that hopefully they'll stay in the North. And we have a bunch of people in the program who are from the North. We have people from the Yukon, we have people from Fort Nelson, we have people from Terrace, from Prince George. So these are people who know the North and wanted to come here and wanted to come back to the North and be here.
There was huge enthusiasm to make this happen, and the support from the community was incredible. And that's really what made all this come together.
I could imagine that this probably wouldn't have floated without the support of the medical community, having the willingness of the doctors in this community.
They were a critical part of it because, you know, what you need is clinical teachers to run a successful medical program. And, you know, we're not just talking about residents, but students as well. And it's a big transition, you know, for the hospital and for the family practices to suddenly have lots of learners around. But having said that, the residency program was already here, and that had built a good foundation of teaching in the community. But we had no difficulty getting the numbers of teachers we needed, and everybody was enthusiastic. This is a community-inspired, you know, program.
When you walk into this building, you know, and look around, I mean, does it kind of pull the heartstrings a little bit? I mean, you look at this and you think to yourself, wow, I was a real big part of this, right?
Yeah, well, I was only one part of it. So many people were involved. So, you know, I worked with the architects and the builders, but, you know, they were the ones doing this. You know, we worked on recruiting faculty and staff. And, you know, if you look around the walls here, you see where the communities have donated. And everybody pulled together, and, you know, the partnership here between UNBC and UBC, I mean, the Northern Medical Program is a UBC medical degree, and they have been very supportive of, you know, enabling the program to happen here. And certainly in the early days, we had to make it more flexible in order that it fitted into our northern context here.
It's been a huge boon. The number of physicians practicing in the North that have come out of our program is, I don't know the numbers, but it's tremendous. And every day we see them in the hospital, and they're spread around all over the North.
And it has worked. Half of Northern Medical Program students are high school graduates from the North, while 60% of graduates who practice in BC do so in northern and rural communities, while 30% practice in Northern Health's region. 60% of those graduates go into family practice.
Would it be fair to say that just the rationale, the mandate of this particular medical school is what attracts people from the rural communities? Because the idea is that if you come from a rural community, the likelihood, these are people that they don't want to live in Vancouver. They don't want to be a doctor in Vancouver. They come to this program specifically because they don't want to be a physician in Vancouver. Would that be fair to say?
It's not only fair, it's based on evidence. There's a lot of evidence in the medical education literature now that if you want to train rural doctors, you need to find people who are from rural backgrounds or who have very strong rural affinity and train them in a rural area. And that's your best option to recruit and retain.
I don't know that it's quite back to the old country GP, but...
Dr. Michael Moran says the success is evident everywhere, with NMP graduates in hospitals and clinics throughout the region. But for him, what is more telling is the success in recruiting specialists, the source of the original angst in 2000.
They are now learning what it's like to practice in rural or semi-rural areas, and when we used to have a terrible recruiting problem for orthopedics, that's gone away. We don't have any issue recruiting now, and it's partly because of the rally and then getting the students here as residents and getting some specialty training and realizing that this is actually a pretty good place to be.
Doctors stay where they're trained as a general rule. So training people in the north means that hopefully they'll stay in the north. And we have a bunch of people in the program who are from the north. We have people from the Yukon, we have people from Fort Nelson, we have people from Terrace, from Prince George. So these are people who know the north and wanted to come here and wanted to come back to the north and be here.
That was January of 2005. The first medical students had arrived in Prince George. Fast forward to March of the same year, not even 3 months after successfully overcoming all the odds of having medical students training in the north, the BC Cancer Agency tells Northern Health that the north does not merit full cancer care. In its report, guidelines for the Cancer Agency's consideration were a population of oncology cases large enough to support and justify such a service, transportation links, critical mass of surgical and medical oncologists, the minimum staff for medical physics, electronics, dosimetry and radiation therapy technology, the necessary infrastructure, and the necessary treatment capacity to keep the equipment warm, so to speak. With all that, the agency concluded, when the above criteria are examined, it does not appear that the catchment area for the north is large enough to support a service at this time.
You barely got settled in again, months, and then you're on the fight again.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly the way to describe it. You know, that report was an incredible motivator. Just like the rally motivated a group of people to make a difference, that report is something to this day that makes me anxious when I hear about it. It went back again to that whole sense of we're not big enough. You know, the area is too sparsely populated. We would literally sit and figure out how are we going to push our own government to realize that this is absolutely necessary.
It was a daunting task, convincing the powers that be that a cancer centre was necessary for the north.
No, they were absolutely, the BC Cancer Agency, which is housed within the Provincial Health Services Authority, was oppositional right from the beginning.
Once again, the Northern Medical Society took an active role, heading to Thunder Bay, Ontario, where a new facility had just opened its doors. The likeness of the two communities was stunning. An industrial community, 8 hours from the nearest large urban centre by car, which services the surrounding area. It was a bid to make the case for cancer care.
Our own people were very excited by what they saw in Thunder Bay, Ontario. That's a similar community to ours in many ways. It's away at the end of the road. They have similar issues. Our team were very, very pleased with what they saw there. They do a very good standard of practice, very successful indeed. And our doctors felt that this model would be immediately translatable to Northern British Columbia. So we do feel that this is something that should be recommended to the board.
We have a hurdle every time we try to do something. The cancer agency was not interested in to put it bluntly, in looking after people from the north. One of the comments that we heard was, well, when they put a cancer agency in Abbotsford, they said that people from Chilliwack would no longer have to drive to Vancouver. But they were happy for people from Prince George or Prince Rupert or Fort St. John to drive to Vancouver.
But government wasn't absolutely certain the BC Cancer Agency had it right. Dr. Charles Jago and then Northern Health Board Chair Jeff Burkhart are tasked with visiting communities across the region to hear their stories.
The report was, first of all, the first recommendation was not a cancer center in Prince George. The first recommendation was to expand the oncology services throughout and create a network of care in northern BC. The second recommendation was a cancer center.
And it went on that way until November 2004, when MLA Shirley Bond actually said,
"It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when."
At what point did it not become an if?
I don't remember the dates specifically, but I remember that I just know this, that it was something that I was not prepared to give up on, and there were enough other people that were part of that belief, once again, that belief that it's something the North deserved.
In May of 2007, Northern Health has been given the green light to develop a business case for improved cancer care in the North and a cancer facility.
It was in a very exciting time, and as you can appreciate, this involved many people across the board. I think it just generated a lot of enthusiasm and excitement, literally up in the north, down south at the BC Cancer Agency.
The province will fund a new cancer centre in Prince George to serve all of northern British Columbia.
And so it was, the commitment to build a complete cancer care centre in Prince George.
So government gave us a budget, and within that budget we had to, literally was the envelope to work. And I still remember the announcement said that this cancer centre will be up and running by 2012. And I think people thought they were crazy. You know, for us to actually develop a cancer centre in such a short period of time was just unheard of at that stage.
Dr. Robert Olsen was the first hire for the facility.
So first, when I heard about it, I hadn't even heard of Prince George. So at first I was like, no, I don't think that's for me. But then the more I learned about it, the more I got interested. I think the biggest thing that got me here was the medical school, to be honest. So just that hint that a small town could also be academic was something that brought me. That's not the same reason that everyone comes, but I know I got drawn by, oh, I can have an academic career here. I can teach, and I can do research, and I get to live somewhere small, which is what I wanted to do.
We had to work fairly hard, and we were eventually successful to recruit 2 medical oncologists that were international medical graduates to come and work here in the north. We were very fortunate. Dr. Olsen was the first appointment for the radiation oncologist, but soon afterwards we were successful in appointing an additional 2 people, radiation oncologists. So at the end of the day, it was difficult, and it took us, I think, well, we had to start about 1.5 years ahead of time to actually start recruiting for those positions. And obviously it was delightful that Dr. Olsen accepted. He was young, he was brand new coming out of the program, and that's what you need to get started. And so we saw afterwards the other 2 radiation oncologists were appointed, as well as the 2 medical oncologists, and that got us going. And what I understand today is they're fully staffed, and we've certainly seen the benefits of that. So it's been very good.
1, 2, 3.
In October of 2012, then Premier Christy Clark came to the city for the ribbon cutting on the brand new facility, and it exceeded expectations from the day the doors opened.
It's a regional cancer center and it brings together this huge range of support for people who are suffering from cancer. For the first time, you can get all of your cancer care in the north. This is a huge day. It's an incredible milestone. People in the north should be so proud of this.
At the time of the centre's opening, the BC Cancer Agency anticipated treating 750 patients per year. Within the first 3 months, 188 radiation therapy patients were treated. In its first year of operations, 140 chemotherapy patients and 418 radiation therapy patients were treated.
You were quoted in the Citizen at one point as saying that if this had not been a success, the cancer likely would not have happened. What do you mean? Why?
Well, I think when a community comes together to make something happen, and the medical program is something they came together around, then it gives the community the kind of confidence that, well, we've done this one, let's do something else. And so the Cancer Centre was another big need, and you will know, looking back at the time, that it was very controversial trying to, get everything in place to make it happen. And I think having medical training here and having the ability to, build a bigger research programs in the north was actually probably one of the assets that made Prince George a more attractive place once we could get through the kind of political barriers to making the Cancer Centre happen.
I wouldn't have come, I know that for sure, and so it's part of the catalyst. I think you need an academic community to engage physicians, because it's a big part of recruitment and retention. So I think teaching is a big part, but so is research. So we've already had people, unfortunately, who didn't come to Prince George because we didn't have a research program yet. And so I think we need to fix that. I think a big part of our healthcare focus now should be, let's open up trials so that we can recruit and retain people in these northern communities.
Research is obviously something that you see is lacking at this point. I mean,
do.
we've come a long way from the days of you weren't even here when we had the huge rally because
no, I was not. I've heard of it a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And it has been transformative of healthcare in this community.
For
when
sure.
You see this facility, the Northern Medical, this has become a teaching and learning, recruitment efforts and so on. So you've identified, for you at any rate, research or the lack thereof as probably still a gap.
It's something that we can improve upon, and we are doing it. But I think we did it in the right order, so I'm not making fun of where we are. I think that it would have been premature to have focused on research 15 years ago, because we needed to improve the medical school first. I just think now we're at that transition point, and we shouldn't be happy with the status quo. We should always be looking for more improvement. We shouldn't be happy with the status quo. We should always be looking for more improvement.
Dr. Robert Olsen is one of the lead oncologists at the BC Cancer Agency's Centre for the North and one of the first hires for the Cancer Centre. He is also on the faculty for the Northern Medical Program, as are many members of the local medical community. Dr. Paul Winwood is one of those practicing physicians who also happens to be the Regional Associate Dean for the Northern Medical Program. He says the work being done at the medical school covers off all 4 pillars of the Canadian Institute for Health Research, which includes biomedical science, clinical research, public health research, and healthcare delivery research.
The thing that's unique about them is that they are doing their research through a northern lens, and very specifically, many of them are addressing issues that affect the health of individuals working in northern, remote and rural communities, and also research about how we deliver healthcare in those areas. There's a lot that we don't know that is unique to practicing medicine in the north and unique to the healthcare issues in the north.
We are announcing that occupational and physical therapy seats are coming to the north.
In May, a major sticking point in the delivery of healthcare was addressed. For years, only 88 of BC's 3,300 physiotherapists were practicing in the north, and most of them were nearing retirement.
I think the areas where I think there is room for growth, and one of them clearly, we're very excited about the physiotherapy and OT programs coming. It would be nice to see them grow and establish. The grow your own is a really important piece.
Physiotherapy, OT coming,
So those are the kinds of training things. What else could we train here? You talked about medical training here. What were some of the other medical training areas that we're lacking?
Well, I think we absolutely need to be looking at speech therapy, speech pathologists. We could train pharmacists here because, again, that's very difficult. But it's a matter, from my perspective, when we set up the Northern Medical Program, it was designed to look at incremental programs over time. And I think that's what we need to look at. What comes next? What are the demands? And one of the things that I've said to this government is the fact that you need to look across the north, figure out what the needs are, and build a training plan to match. So the Ministry of Health's job is to look at what are those needs, to look at the statistics, who do we need, where do we need them. And then advanced education in partnership with health needs to deliver that programming.
I think the other thing I'm becoming more interested in is how we train the next generation of rural generalists. Medicine still seems to be focusing very much on specialty training in the big cities, but that's not what you need in rural areas. And the rural physicians that I work with, particularly in not just in Prince George but in the small communities, are highly skilled with a broad scope of practice. And I think we need to find better ways of training them, maybe for a bit longer, to give them the confidence to be able to deal with all the issues you deal with in a rural area.
You need to go back to the country doctor.
Absolutely.
What about actual services? It boggles my mind that we have to send people from all across the north to Vancouver to get a stent. A stent is a 20-minute day surgery thing. It just boggles my mind that we have to do stuff like basic coronary care, cardiac care. Is elusive to us. I just don't understand that. I don't get that. Just boggles my mind.
And I think people are losing patience. It's ironic that the patients I sit beside now on the plane, more of the cancer care is done in Prince George. Now it is often cardiac care, where people having to go to Vancouver for something which should be done, in my view, here in Prince George. A few months ago, over the course of a 3-week period, 3 couples that I'm aware of, one of the partners in those relationships had to go to Vancouver they were seniors, for care that could have and should be done here in Prince George. 3 couples just in the course of a few weeks. So, the demand is here, the expertise is here, now we need the political will to make it happen, just like we needed that will to make sure that there was a cancer center and a medical training program. So it's time to keep up the advocacy. I absolutely think we need it, and it should be offered here in the north.
But there has been suggestion that cardiac care, something as simple as a stent, could not be done at University Hospital of Northern BC because there are not the adequate operating rooms should something go wrong. And that is the biggest issue weighing on the medical community right now.
Frankly, I look back at the old footage from 2000 inside those operating rooms, and boy, not much has changed.
Nothing has changed. I think the operating rooms have had a paint job. We still don't have enough electrical plugs to run our equipment and things. The operating rooms are way too small for the equipment we need and stuff like that. And they're now, I think, approaching 50 years old. There's septic backup and various things like that are happening. And it's not just the operating theaters, it's the hospital itself is old.
It's cumbersome, and I think it can even be dangerous if we're having problems getting in and out of ORs because of the amount of equipment that's in there. So I think we definitely need new ORs. They're very old. They haven't been upgraded in many, many years. I don't even know how many years it's been, but over 30 anyways. And we're at a point now where anything new that's being built is being built at least twice as big as anything we've got. And that tells you that room is needed. They wouldn't be building big ORs if they didn't think it was needed. But we don't have that, and I think that's a problem.
He says his patients are making what he calls bad decisions around their health care because they simply can't go to Vancouver for specialist treatment. Recruitment of surgeons would be useless because the existing complement of surgeons are already taxing the existing operating suites, and it's beginning to be reflected in the staff.
I think Northern Health is trying really hard. And I think they're doing what they can to work within the constraints that they have. But they are up against a brick wall, and I think we're seeing that in the hospital. And it's hard, and I see that in the morale of the nurses and the doctors and the staff that are working there. They're all working really, really hard, and they're good people, and they're working hard for the patients that are there. But they just, you see that lack of, the morale is going, and there's a frustration that's built in, especially amongst the surgeons and different groups. But without a new environment to work in, a new tower, a new hospital, whatever the case may be, there's just no real way around that.
Primary care doctors and community health workers.
The condition of the operating rooms at University Hospital of Northern BC is no secret to Health Minister Adrian Dix. He was asked about it during his first visit to Prince George in July of 2017, shortly after forming government.
In 2008, I think I had visited operating rooms that were in 2008 were seen as too small and insufficiently modern for both the demands and the ambitions of the hospital here, right? And that was 2008. I understand there's some initial plans being made, and obviously we'll be supporting Northern Health as they go through that.
And I have continual concerns about capacity here in our region. We definitely have aging infrastructure, and we are not alone. I fully recognize the challenges that governments face in terms of needs all across this province, but we're a regional centre.
But then this announcement.
Today, I'm very, very proud to announce that Burnaby Hospital will undergo a complete redevelopment.
It was the latest in a string of new hospital announcements. Terrace, Dawson Creek, Fort St. James, Vancouver General, Kamloops Royal Inland. So we asked Premier John Horgan himself directly if a new surgical tower for University Hospital of Northern BC was in the works.
We had a whole host of acute care facilities that need attention. Prince George is on that list. We're working diligently. I think we're at the concept plan stage.
Well, they've submitted.
Yeah.
Approved yet. They've submitted a concept plan.
The concept plan's been submitted, and we're working on it. We hang together because we're buddies.
So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when?
I think that's a safe bet, yeah.
The sort of rumors that I hear is that it is a matter of when, and I have no doubt there are 1,000 different directions the Premier and the Minister of Health are being pulled on money issues and the cost of these sorts of things. So it's reassuring that they're saying when.
I don't get frustrated that Burnaby got something, because Burnaby probably needs something. So to make our case stronger by bringing down a different hospital saying they shouldn't get it, we should, I don't think that's right. I mean, you can have multiple needs, and I think the province has multiple needs. Terrace needs a hospital. Dawson Creek needs a hospital. All these places need hospitals, but we also need one.